Playpen time is a great foundation. It's a great introduction to an amazing skill that will last them for years and years and years, because playpen time teaches boundaries. And um, and I think we all agree that playpen time is good, but playpen time morphs into blanket time, and then blanket time morphs into room time, and it's just a wonderful thing to be able to do. And then room time sometimes morphs into, with a lot of kids, morphs into stations, just setting up a station here, a station, because we could never do stations like a place where they just play with puzzles, or they just play with Legos, or they just play with, if they hadn't had playpen time and they hadn't had um blanket time. So what I want is, I want to hear from you. How did you, how did you, maybe even first of all, what awakened you to playpen time? Because there are so many, Abby was telling me just recently about, oh, maybe I should have you guys go around and introduce yourself and tell how many kids you have. But Abby was telling me about a friend that she said, I just don't know what to do with my toddler. And I can relate to that, because for many years I didn't know what to do with my toddlers. So, but let's take a minute and go around and introduce yourselves, how long you've known these materials, and the number of kids. That would be great.
I'll start.
Sure. Oh, go ahead.
I'm Lauren Tidwell. I have three kids. Caroline is 6.5. And we started taking these classes when she was like 2 weeks old. So we've been at it for just over 6 years. Bo is 4.5, and then Watson is 2. So one girl, two boys.
I'm Susanna Sidelli, and I have 5 boys, and I'm pregnant with baby number 6, which is a girl. And my oldest is 8, Luca, and then I've got twins, Noah and Mateo. They just turned 6, and then I have 4-year-old, almost 4-year-old Ari, and then almost 2-year-old Oliver. So we started taking classes when Luca, I think, was just 4. So my oldest was just 4, so over 4 years. But I've known about growing families and growing kids since I was like 13, because I used to babysit for a parenting class that my parents facilitated, and so I saw the transformation in the kids that I watched weekly through that class. And so that's what I always thought. When I have kids, I'm going to do these classes. But yeah.
I am Abby, and I'm Patricia's daughter. I have 4 kids. We're about to hit birthday season, but right this minute they are 8, 6, 4, and 2. Jack is 8, Charlotte's 6, Henry's 4, and then Marlo is 2. And I grew up attending these classes and going to these classes and babysitting the people that were attending these classes. And my mom would get contact mom phone calls, and people would be like, I need help with blah, blah, blah. And we'd be like, well, she's in the shower right now, but if you want help with the playpen time, let me tell you how to do it. And so me and my siblings we would take turns answering the calls and giving parents advice on how to do certain things. Um, and then my husband and I have taken a few different classes over the years, but yeah, I feel like this material is ingrained in my soul more so than, and when I read a book, I'm like, oh yeah, this is common sense. Everybody knows this already, but I think it's because I was raised by Patricia.
I think I remember one time I don't know where I was, but a mom did call and say, "Well, your mom's not available," and she was just desperate. Can you answer my question? And my kids are like, "Well, we'll try." So, so
That's
let's
awesome.
let's talk for a minute about what is it that you think playpen time produces in your kids? Any one of you can chime in at any moment.
I think it produces self-control and teaches them like focus, um, to be able to like play with two toys and just like focus on what they're doing and kind of like make the room or make the options like smaller in a sense that they just, they don't have an entire room of toys to play with. They just have what's in their playpen.
Yeah, I
And
was gonna
then
say,
it makes yeah,
Go ahead, Ep, sorry.
I think it makes
I
them
was,
more creative because of what
mm,
Lauren just shared. Like they have to be creative in their independent play. So they like know there's times when I'm independent and mom is doing this. Like I would with me, like a lot of the time when I put them into a playpen, I'd be like, this is your job right now. I'm gonna go do my job right now. Whatever my job is, I need to go do my job. And I can't talk to you right now because I'm busy doing my work. You're gonna be busy doing your work. And so taught them like be creative with what I've given you, be independent. And we're not having a conversation. Like this is a mental break for me. This is an emotional break for me. Like, and you get to learn how to be creative and be independent.
mm, yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Just as being content with their own company and not needing to be entertained or entertained and played with as much, and all that. For sure. Yeah, it's huge. And then self-control, which I'm going to circle back around at some point with a question for you, Patricia. You brought up a really good point in our class last night about the playpen and the things that kids will do while they're in the playpen. And I was like, oh, I got to get but we didn't I didn't get a chance to ask you okay, so what do you do if your kid is doing this, and this, while they're in the playpen. But yeah.
All right. So yeah, circling back, how about security? What are the elements of security that the playpen provides?
Tons.
And
I mean, are you talking about physical safety and security, or just for the child,
both,
emotional? Yeah, the emotional security.
And
I think I for sure I see that with my kids. Like when there's a lot of stuff going on in the house, I'll take my playpen and actually put it in a different bedroom that's out of the living room when there's homeschool and all this other stuff. Put them in another room, and then they'll just be quiet and calm, and it's like they have their little sanctuary. I think it's really good for them.
I remember when I was first introduced to this parenting material, and someone suggested that I give my fourth-born room time, and they said, "You know what room time is?" And I said, "I don't have a clue what room time is." I think David was a little guy, and they began to describe it for me. And when I started, because of the philosophy that I was believing in, I thought, this is cruel and unusual punishment. But the longer I did it, the more I thought, this is a gift I'm giving my child to be able to have their own space, to be able to have their own place, to be able to have their own ability to be creative. And it took us about 9 months to get there. But it was, what a gift once we got to room time. And I would say that room time was much easier with David than any of my other kids because he had progressive boundaries. He had playpen time, then he grew into blanket time, which grew into room time. So,
For the record, as her fourth born that took 9 months to get there, I still don't like my own space. I don't like to be independent. I don't like to play alone. Some kids just don't like it, and that's okay, but they still need it.
that's
I still need
very,
alone time, but I don't like it.
yeah, sane and in her right mind. I would tell people it took 9 months for her to sit on the bed and play contentedly with, of all things, pencils, colored pencils. She had her pencil families. So one of the times, and I've shared many times, if you've been in any of my classes, how we came to understand that playpen time teaches boundaries. And I was doing water aerobics, and there was no one around to babysit David. And I didn't, back in those days, you didn't have those cute little pack and plays or those cute little playpens that fold up like a camp chair and you take with you on your back. It was hard and it folded in half. So, and then you carry this luggy thing. And I thought, I am not going to carry that to the pool. And when I have described this to some people, they thought, oh, this woman takes her child to the edge of the pool while she's doing water aerobics. And I just for clarification purposes, I'm not swimming laps while my child's playing on the edge of the pool. I'm right there. But I laid out the blanket and I told him, this is your yes on the inside, and this is your no. And I went around to all four edges and said, this is your no. And for the next 45 minutes, he stayed on that blanket and played. And even one of the toys I gave him rolled away, and he just stayed on the edge and watched it roll away. And it was then that I saw that all the fruit of those, he did not like playpen time. He cried. Sometimes he just laid on his back, which to me, I am such a doer. It's like, if you got to be busy doing something. He lay on his back and just act as bored as the day was long. And that really was hard for me, because we all know it's all about stimulating our children's brains, right? That's what life is all about. And and when there were times when he fell asleep in his playpen, and I remember calling my contact mom, going, I just don't know what to do, because I've tried music, I've tried switching out toys midstream, I've tried all kinds of things, and he just never, ever, ever liked it. But the transformation came when he was given blanket time and then room time. I just saw all the fruit of my year and a half worth of work um, coming to pass, because he played great in his room. He picked up great in his room. I want to circle back and say that when he would fall asleep in his playpen, it's like, I don't want to give up nap. And the gal that was mentoring me said, if he chooses to sleep in his playpen, he's sleeping in his playpen. That doesn't mean he doesn't get nap time. And I said, okay, I can do it. So I was probably pretty hardcore, largely because I was changing my whole philosophy of how I was thinking about parenting. So, it does provide a sense of security. It does provide a like Ab mentioned, a little bit of independence for them and for us. They know we're coming back, and that's got to be a great thing for them, to have that little bit of stretch, that they're not attached to us at the hip, and then we come back, and it's a wonderful thing. What are some of the other skills that they learn during playpen time that morph into room time, or morph into blanket time, morph into room time? And I'd like to hear how you guys made that transition and what it looks like in your homes. I did ask two questions: skills, and how did you make the transitions? Lauren, your turn.
Okay. Well, I'll start with how we made the transition. I feel, are you saying the transition from like blanket time, or from playpen time to blanket time?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'll start with the transition. When we transitioned to blanket time, it was like 18 months for both boys. I remember that timing like well. And kind of what you just talked about, like I would, put them on a blanket for the first time and say, this is your yes, this is your no, this is your yes, this is your no. Go around the blanket. I remember you mentioning like putting tape on the floor, because we had wood floors, and I feel like the blanket would always get like ruffled up and messed up. So we would really like designate that boundary. And then I would sit there, like while we were training, moving from playpen time to blanket time, I would sit there like reading something or pretending like I was reading something, and just kind of like watching them, waiting to see kind of what they would do. And then I think that I probably did that for like a few days, maybe even like a week or so. And then slowly, I would, like walk away and go make lunch or whatever and see kind of how they would handle it. And then over time, as they showed like, okay, they're going to obey and stay and not get off, um, then I would put them in their own room and close the door. And I would have a monitor on them so that I could, like see if they stepped off or whatever. But really, I don't like keep a close watch. I just feel like for both of my boys particularly, it's helped them be in their own room. They're not getting like distracted with the other kids and like what's happening, it's primarily during homeschool that um that like Watson is on blanket time, my 2-year-old. And so he just does better when he's kind of like in his own space. I turn on classical music and I shut the door and he does great. So that's how we transitioned it. The second he would like step off or show an inclination like he was going to get off, I would swat him and remind him, like, this is your yes, this is your no. And then what was the other question?
I don't remember. What was the other question? It was about how you
Like
made the transition and
other skills they learn.
the what, Susanna?
Any other skills they learn, you said? Is there, what other skills do they learn from?
The skills that they learned while they're doing, let's say blanket time, because blanket time is the next big move after playpen time.
While they're doing playpen time, I do feel like they learn to clean up because it's like a forced, like designated time when they're done sitting down with them and like teaching them to put their toys away. So I feel like that, like, I don't know, intentional training happens at that time. Did we already talk about contentment?
No, but that mention it.
Okay. I really feel like it helps a lot with contentment. Like, yeah, that they're forced to play with what they've been given. And I always think, I don't know, for my boys particularly, I feel like music has like helped them just
Yeah.
turning on like, not like, anything crazy, but I usually turn on classical music. And I think it like when I get Watson off of his blanket now, but playpen back then, when he was younger, I feel like he's just so like, I almost want to say peaceful, but he's just like,
A lot
I
more
don't know.
content.
Yes, he's so content and he's just like, hi mommy, like, I don't know. His demeanor is so different when I get him off of blanket time. Like he's just a relaxed little guy. So
Anyone else talk about the skills, the principles? One of the things that I was thinking about this morning before we got on was how it's not one of those, it's not a quick fix. When Beth Blunk and I did this talk once before, and she didn't start her kids on playpen time until they were like a lot a bit older, like 18 months or a year. And I remember hearing someone say, "Oh, I so regret." She was pregnant with her second. She said, "I so regret not having done playpen time diligently with my first. So I'm really going to do it with my second." And I thought, "Oh, this is important." And David didn't have a chance. He got playpen time from the time he came home from the hospital. And I would put him in the playpen in his little reclining bouncer, and the baby trapeze over so he had something to look at. And we started at 5 minutes. And the anniversary of every month, the anniversary of his birth, so on the 12th of every month, I would increase it 5 minutes. And it's amazing to me the angst that I felt increasing, because it was not the most pleasant experience, but to increase it 5 minutes, it's like, no, I don't want to put up with 5 more minutes. But once we stepped into that transition, um, it was fine. He did fine. And by the time he was a year, we had an hour. Because he was the fifth born, we didn't consistently get an hour twice a day, but it was great to know that that I had that option all the time. So, um, so what about other, because like I said, it is a skill that grows with them, which is not, sometimes we fall into wanting just to manage a behavior, but because you're teaching and training a skill, it has far-reaching impact. So what are the skills and principles, Ab, you think they glean from Playpen Time, transitioning to blanket time?
I mean, I think when we've talked about it, I think sitting and staying, like learning how to sit and stay, learning how to, like, that is so, as I think about my 8-year-old now, and that, like, I am able to tell him, like, you are going to sit right here and you are going to do this math problem. And you're going to stay, like, he's not running away. He's not, I mean, he is putting up a fight sometimes, but even that, I can be like, we need to check our heart right now and we can have a conversation, because we've been working on this since he was born. And this, like, this is a boundary. Like, I have created boundaries for you. I am your mom and I love you, and I will continue to create boundaries for you until you can, develop more of a brain and you can create your own boundaries. But right now I'm creating your boundaries. And I think that it's just so, like, every single, we use the sit and stay, or the you are not allowed to touch, or you are not allowed to do, every day, all day, wherever we go. We're in the grocery store. We're talking about what's our yes and what's our no. And it's not a blanket on the floor at that moment. It's every single thing besides the floor they're walking on at that moment. And so I think, like, there's so many different moments of, like, this boundary, this self-control, the, like, I am telling you what you are allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. And because at home we have practiced a million times, you will stay on this blanket. And if you get off this blanket, there is a consequence. Whatever that consequence is, you will stay on this blanket. So they know that, like, they can trust me. They can trust that I will hold to my word as well. Like, it's a good hour-long moment of, like, I am holding true to my word. If you get off that blanket, there is a consequence 100% of the time. Like, I'm not going to let you just wander off the blanket or wander out of the playpen or wander out of your room. You will stay where I have told you to stay. And so then the listening and staying tuned to my voice and knowing that, like, my words matter and my yes is my yes and my no is my no. So I don't know if that actually answered the
Yeah,
question.
that's great.
Right.
Anna, and then you go ahead and answer, and then we'll tackle your question. But the skills and the principles.
I know. I feel like I know. I think you guys both answered so well. I was going to definitely say the cleanup aspect. And I've noticed with my last two, number 4 and number 5, actually, my fifth is, he's almost 2, but, and with the playpen time and my almost 2-year-old, I'm now starting to work. I'm working on him with blanket time, which has been a little bit of a touch and go thing. Patricia knows this. And he's been posing some interesting challenges that I haven't had with any of the other boys in blanket time, which is just funny. But both of my last 2 kids that I think I did was the most, like, precise with blanket time and playpen time. They are the best cleaner uppers. Like, even Ari with his all of his ways. I'm like, oh, can you need to clean up the box of Duplos? Like, an enormous box of Duplos that is all over the whole floor in the bedroom. And he just goes in there, cleans all of the toys up and comes out. I'm like, did you clean up the Duplos? He goes, yes, mommy. And I'm like blown away. And so he's actually really pretty neat, and he will clean up better than his older brother sometimes. Like, I'll be like, hey, Ari's the one cleaning up over here. Sometimes he doesn't, but, like, a lot of times he does. And then my newest one, my youngest, Oliver, he is like, it might be personality too, but he's just very orderly. He's very orderly and cleans up. He wants to clean up everybody else's toys. He wants to clean up but I've just noticed, like, oh, this is really interesting. And because I have been putting that into practice with both of them since they were born, basically the whole playpen time and blanket time. So I think definitely the cleaning up.
Tell us, tell us how you train them to clean up. I mean, you guys have heard it from me, but
Yeah. I mean, I think now it's a little tricky with I have a new playpen that's round, basically. So the four corners doesn't work quite as well. But I just put, we put the toys, if it's a four-sided, the square, something, you could just put things in four corners and then have them return their toys to those four corners when they're done playing. I remember doing that with Ari a lot. And then a lot of times in his crib. And then with Oliver, I put his toys. And sometimes I'm not as consistent with like making sure you put your toys to the side. And I probably have too many toys in there, which I was thinking, I have to take them out now. But but I just would put a bin. Sometimes I would just put a little basket inside and say, okay, let's pick up your toys, like clean up your toys and pick up time. And I'd put a few in, okay, you grab one or whatever. And very young, I mean, at a year, probably he was starting to put stuff. He would just pick up stuff and put it in the box or whatever. And I was, wow.
I remember having David under my arm, and I would reach in and I put the toy in his hand. So he was still that little. It was before he was a year. And we take that toy and put it in the corner and do that with every single toy I had given him. And I think I shared with you a gal that when she had the timer going, she had a little girl, and she said when her daughter would hear the timer, she'd start putting all her things away. Now, I never experienced that. Never in the 18 months we were doing Playpen Time did he ever take the initiative to put things away. But when he got to the place where he was in his room playing, he was fastidious about picking up all the toys and putting them where they belonged, which the encouragement is, if you don't see the fruit initially, just know that you are training good principles into your kids. So what is your question, Susanna? Let's see if we can.
Yeah, the last night you mentioned about children if they're in the playpen, but they are pulling stuff into the playpen. If they're reaching out and trying to grab whatever they can grab and they're pulling it all in. And what was the other? There was another, it was like they're doing that, or is it throwing stuff out? Oh no, you're saying because they're on blanket time and they're like reaching off of the blanket and pulling whatever they can and putting it onto the blanket. That they can it's actually it's like a deceptive behavior eventually, can lead to like a deceptive way of, acting. And then also there was another kind of a ramification, or just kind of like you're not being content with what you have. Right. And you're just kind of, I want more and more stuff. And so that's what's been happening with Oliver. If his playpen is close to something else, because sometimes I just have, I have it next to a chair or next to a bed or something, I come in, sometimes he's just pulled something off and it's just laying on the floor, like he knocked some books down off of a shelf, that was next to the playpen. And so, I mean, in the moment, I'm like, no, you don't touch that, no, this is your no, whatever. But at that point, it's been down on the floor for so long. I'm like, I don't know, and then, but also like him pulling, he was next to the chair yesterday and there was like all this laundry and stuff on it. He had pulled all of it into the playpen. So we had this, I don't know if he was really playing with it, but it was just this pile of stuff in there. And then I was like, oh my goodness. So, yeah, so I was going to say, okay, well, how do I just, if I can't, I don't want to have to just move his playpen. So obviously I just want to train him to be content.
Boy, that's tough. The way I got around that, the child, and the thing we want to think about, and that was the thing that we talked about last night, was the ramifications. It may be innocent because they may be on their blanket or they may be in their playpen, and all they've got is toys all around. So they're pulling toys in, but into their play space. One of the things we want to be teaching and training is contentment.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone can reach and someone can say, I'm not content, but maybe that will make me content, or maybe that will make me content, or maybe we're not training. I mean, it's almost defeating our purpose.
Yeah.
To have them in a confined space, to be content with what mommy and daddy. So it's with what mommy and daddy have given them. So it also is disrupting trust. Like, I don't trust that you are going to give me the toys that I need. I have to do this myself. And when they get to the place of saying, I have to do it, they're not saying I'm wise in my own eyes, but they're acting like they're wise in their own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when they grow, like take that behavior 5 years down the road, and a teacher asks them to sit, but within their arm's reach maybe is a light switch, or maybe is another kid's desk or pencil. And if they haven't learned to be responsible with that, their own space, they're going to be tormenting someone. And I mean, that I use that term very loosely,
Yeah.
but do you either, Lauren, you or Abby, want to give insight into what how would you handle that? What would you do?
I think it depends on the age and the temperament of the child. I think if it's like my 2-year-old or younger, I would just be very careful about where I'm putting them. I would start putting them in the middle of the room and not close to anything, I think is what I would do with that age, just to remove the temptation. I mean, I would do exact like, no, that's your no, we're not doing that. This is not a thing. I think if it's my 4 or 5-year-old doing that, then there's a consequence. Like they know, even if it's a new learning lesson, something, and my 4 or 5-year-old, maybe even my 3-year-old is getting into things, they are fully aware of what they're doing. And so I think then I'm starting to look more into like the you're being sneaky right now, and we need
Right.
to nip that in the butt and deal with the hard issue there.
Right.
But yeah, I think with my littlers, like probably your Oliver, I'd be like, okay, we can't put him. He's just curious and he just wants everything in there. And so I think
Yeah.
that's more what's going on in his heart than like he's being sneaky. But also, the temperament of him better than
Yeah.
any of us do.
And
Lauren, what were
if
you
they're
gonna say? Sorry.
characterized by that
Oh.
behavior, if it's just an occasional thing because it just happens to be near, or they're